If you're joining us, we're just waiting for Brent to dial in. I think he's in LA, but I'll be speaking with Brent Butt in moments. This is also still sort of a test. So file it away in under B for beta. So when you hear the ding, it means Brent is here. In the meantime, I'll play a little corner gas music just to set the stage. The song needs more cowbell. This is The Odds, by the way, Craig Northey and The Odds. And there's an episode of Toronto Mike with Craig and the Vaults that we recorded a couple of months ago. Craig Northey and Brent Butt collaborate a lot, so I might open this episode by playing their new Christmas song, since I think that's the reason he's come on the show today. He's very proud of this Christmas song. And why the heck not? If I wrote a Christmas song, I'd be proud of it too. So we're expecting Brent Butt, if that is his real name. We're expecting him in 2 minutes. 2 minutes. 2 minutes to Butt. What is today, the 21st of December? What's everybody doing? Oh, Brent Butt's here, so let's let him in and have a convo. Hey, Brent, how you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you doing?
Good.
I always have a hard time starting these things because I got a new mouse out here and it's like 1,000 times more sensitive than my other one. So every time I go to click on something, it overshoots it by half a mile.
Yeah, you got to dive into the preferences and get that back to the way you like it. It's too sensitive. Tell me a little bit about that amazing Spider-Man pinball machine. Like, when did you get that?
I got this about 6 years ago when I was setting up. This is a house that my wife and I moved into about 6 years ago. This is my garage. I always tell people it's the 67th floor of Sparrow Media Towers, but it's my garage. And I knew I wanted a pinball game because this is like a game room studio. And so I went to this place called John's Jukes here in Vancouver. They didn't have anything I really liked at the time. And so he said, tell me what you like and I'll keep an eye out. Right. I said, I like sports and superheroes and I like games circa mid 70s to mid 80s. But a month later, he called me up. He said, we have a 1980 Spider-Man Gottlieb game. I said, that game was in the bus depot in my hometown. I used to play that as a kid. So I bought that. It was in amazing shape too.
Oh, I guess you didn't even get sticker shock, right? Because you had to have that, right? I don't know if you negotiated or not, but
no, I was at his mercy.
You're like, I'll pay twice that.
Yeah, I demanded to pay more.
So how you doing? You're in Vancouver. For some reason, I thought you were in LA, but I don't know. It makes me feel good to know you're still here in Canada. How are you holding up during this pandemic here?
Doing pretty well, all things considered. I have to count my blessings. I know, because we haven't been from a health standpoint. Our relatives, our families are okay. And from a work standpoint, we're very fortunate. The fact that we do an animated show, it lends itself to, we never had to shut down. We had to tweak and pivot and make adjustments, but we were able to keep going. So I'm counting my blessings.
It's almost like you saw this coming.
Yeah, I'm prescient. Yeah, so I mean, I had to cancel some runs of stand-up shows, but I have this other thing to fall back on. So I feel for a lot of my friends, a lot of my buddies who are just strictly comics. That's it. They had 92% of their income hauled away immediately.
I know it awful times, right? I mean, I talked to a lot of musicians. In fact, recently I had a good chat with Craig Northey, who's going to come up in a moment because
Never heard of him.
he's connected to some of Canada's greatest comics, really, because yeah, of course there's the Brent Butt connection, which we'll talk about, but he's well connected to Kids in the Hall as well.
Yeah, I met him through Kids in the Hall, actually. That's how I met Craig. Because back in the old days, when I lived in Toronto, like late 80s, early 90s, I used to do studio warm-up for the kids when they were taping their show. I was one of the comics that did studio warm-ups for them. And then I moved to Vancouver, and they started a run of live shows. And so they called up and they said, hey, we're going to be playing Vancouver and Victoria. Would you open for us there? And, the kids were fans of Odds were a fan of the kids, so they came down to the show to meet, and so that's where I first met the Odds, was at the Kids in the Hall show.
Where was that? Was that the Rivoli? Where was that? Do you remember?
It was at the Vogue Theater here in Vancouver.
Oh, in Vancouver. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you, as you mentioned, you did spend some time in Toronto, right? Pre Corner Gas, you had a little bit of time here in Toronto.
Yeah, when I first started stand up, I started stand up in Saskatoon, then moved to Calgary probably for 4 months, and then realized this is a waste of time. I really should be in Toronto. I went to check out Toronto with a couple other comics. I got invited with a comedian named Jamie Davis from Edmonton. Said, "Listen, I'm driving to Toronto. I know you can't afford gas money, blah blah blah. I don't care. I'm going. Get in. You need to be seen by the people who book shows in Toronto." And so he brought me out there, and I stayed for almost 5 years.
Wow. Okay. And is during this stint, because I saw that you appeared on an episode of Kids in the Hall.
Yeah, a couple actually.
So okay, now I'm a bit of a Kids in the Hall freak here. So a little detail, like basically you were buds from the live shows, and they just had a bit part for you, or how do you get on Kids in the Hall there?
Yeah, that was it. They were always great at kind of throwing a bone to their buddies because they knew it would mean like a couple $100 for the day, if you were in a sketch or something like that. So if there was a part that kind of applied, they felt that you could fill the bill, and it wasn't something huge where they needed a fantastic actor or something. So like I was in a Mr. Heavyfoot sketch. Mr. Heavyfoot goes to the movies, and he's walking down the aisle, and he's stepping on people's feet. I was one of the people whose foot he stepped on. So I don't think you basically see my silhouette going, ow,
You don't get residual checks for that one, I guess.
No. I sold it out. And then I was in a sketch called Stay Down, where Bruce McCullough fights the biggest dude in the world. This guy was like 7'3". I think he was the tallest man in Canada at the time. And anyway, so Bruce, the idea was this guy was in the sketch, Bruce keeps fighting this giant guy, and the guy keeps knocking him down, and he keeps getting up for more, and people are saying, stay down, stay down. Anyway, the big tough guy, the big giant guy, has a couple of tough buddies in the bar.
Right.
And Bruce said to me, would you play one of the big tough guys in the bar? Well, sure, I said, but I'm 5'9", but Bruce is quite small, and so to him, well, if you're 5'9" or 7'3", it's all the same to him,
It's all relative.
Giant.
It's all perspective, I suppose, at that point. And this is really a tangent, but we do that on this show. I remember reading that the Friendly Giant would never make live appearances because he didn't want the kids to see he's like a normal sized man.
Oh yeah. It can burst your bubble like that. I remember one time, my friend, God rest him, Eric Tunney, he was such a funny comedian, and he and I were driving down one day, and he said he used to host a show on CBC called Switchback.
Yes.
And we were driving by the old studios, and he said, that's where I used to record my show, Switchback. that's where Mr. Dressup was recorded. We drove a little farther. There's a corner store, and he said that's where Mr. Dressup bought his cigarettes. And it was like boop, big bubble bursting.
I love that those details like that. Fantastic. I'm going to play this song. So maybe what we'll do is we'll talk about some current stuff, which is Christmas stuff, because 'tis the season. I'm going to have this live right after we finish chatting. So people will get a chance to consume this before Christmas. So I want to play your song. Then we're just going to go back a little bit, if it's cool, and just talk about sort of the origin of Corner Gas and some. I have some questions from your fans, of whom there are many. Sure. So maybe the first hard-hitting question before I play the Christmas song with Craig Northey there is, I've always wondered this forever. Are you really a butt? Like, is butt an actual, like, on your birth certificate? Or is this a comic, like, handle that you adopted?
Yeah, no, it's my actual real name. What the hell would I gain by changing my name to Butt? Well, that's that is some bad decision-making on my part. Yeah, it was Wilson, but no, it's it's Brent that's not my real name. Harry is my real that's an old joke from my stand-up in the 80s.
Oh, I like it. You could bring that back, my friend. It's good. But
no, it's my real name.
So was it? I need to know if it was tough in primary school, etc., with the last name Butt, or do you just get used to it? Like, I guess I'm wondering, did you have to become a comic? Like, were you forced into the role of being sort of the comic because of this last name?
Yes, that's why every person who has the last name Butt is now a touring comedian around the country. They have no other occupation. I mean, some are circus clowns, sure, but the vast majority of the people with the last name Butt are working comedy professionals. No, it's a ridiculous notion. It's no.
I apologize for being.
No, it was actually my. It was very common in my hometown. I'm from a big family, and their cousins and everything. So, Butt in my hometown was like Smith. It never even occurred to me that it was anything unusual until I started traveling, playing hockey as a teenager, and your name is on the back of your sweater, and then people are yelling stuff in the stands, and you're like, oh yeah, it does mean that. But no, I never got teased. Plus, I'm a tremendously physical, powerful fighter, right? So people knew better than to. I'm a trained killer.
Well, that's great. That's great. Here, let's play a little bit. So I'll play a bit of this, and then I'll fade it down, and then I want to find out some details. I think this is, rather impressive. You've recorded a Christmas song here. So this is called "Everyone Can Sing at Christmas."
It's Christmas time. There's joy and love everywhere. There's also a special kind of magic in the air. Even if the rest of the year you can't carry a tune in a bucket, when the north wind blows and you hear the ho ho ho's, it's time to just say it, 'cause everyone can sing at Christmas.
Wow, Brent, it's me, Craig, over on guitar. I'm going to use Christmas magic to do all kinds of things I can't normally do.
Well, hold up, Craig. That's not how this magic works. Don't think that you can suddenly do kung fu.
Well done, Brent. Well done. So what's your impetus here? Is it that you needed a song to go along with your Corner Gas animated holiday episode? Or tell me how this came to be. Everyone Can Sing at Christmas.
The way that it kind of came to be was initially my production partner, Virginia Thompson, said to me, you and Craig, you work well together. You guys should do a Christmas album and release it for Christmas this year. And I said, well, that's like late October. It takes quite a bit to put an album together. I don't know if you know what's involved. But I said, I actually have an idea for a Christmas song. I've had this idea for a song called "Everyone Can Sing at Christmas." And the notion behind it is like that there's this Christmas magic that allows people to sing at Christmas time, but don't rely on this magic to do other things you can't normally do. And then the song kind of becomes a cautionary tale. Right. So anyway, I told Craig Northey, some of the lyrics, and he thought they were funny, and he added some music, and then so I wrote some more lyrics, and then he added some more music, and he got his band the Odds in, and then he got some horn players from Ontario, and next thing you know, I'm in the studio belting it out like Bobby Darin.
I mean, I'm a big fan of the Odds, and Craig. I mean, like you mentioned, you work well with the man. When I had Craig on, we talked a lot about how he's on both the opening theme and the closing theme of Corner Gas, and he's one of Canada's greatest musicians, and he's also in that. I don't know if you know about the project Trans Canada Highwaymen.
Yeah.
Of course, of course. With
And Strippers Union.
right, yes, right, with the
He does it all.
yeah, but I'm going to shout out the Trans Canada Highwaymen first, just to see if I can remember who they are. Of course, we're talking Stephen Page, Chris Murphy, and Craig Northey, and Mo Berg,
And Moberg, yeah.
which is like a Mount Rushmore here of CanCon alt rockers, if you will.
Yeah, that's a talented slew of people there.
Have you ever did you know you could sing? I mean, I know the whole premise of the song is that everyone can sing at Christmas, but
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be weary to put my voice on a track like that, but you hold your own here.
I was well aware I can sing, but that's such a gray, vague term, you know. Leonard Cohen could sing, right? He
Right.
was the male vocalist of the year. It's like he said only Canada would give a guy like me the male vocalist of the year. So I can sing, I just can't sing well. But you know, I don't pigeonhole myself into just doing things that I can do well. I do lots of things I don't do well. I play poker. I'm a legitimately terrible poker player. Like I've been playing poker regularly for I don't know 30 plus years. I still look at the card that says what hand beats what hand. I need a refresher. Does a straight beats a what? You know, I play hockey. I'm no good at hockey. I shoot pool. I'm no good at pool, but I enjoy all these things, so I do them. And I think that's kind of the underlying message. If there is a message to my music, the
Right.
underlying theme of the song is don't worry about whether you're good at it or not. If you have a good time, just do it.
No, that's good. That's good advice. It's a sing like nobody's listening, I think is the old adage.
Yeah.
There.
And then record it and put it on the radio.
Now we are right, exactly. So are you getting airplay? Like are actual radio stations picking that up? It's timely.
Told they are.
Okay.
I don't track these things very closely. Smarter people than me kind of monitor that stuff. I breeze in like the dopey artist, you know. I lay it down and then see you later, everybody. And I hope somebody's looking after these things.
Well,
I think Craig is on top of it.
Well, as you know, and you've got good advice to record a holiday song, because the nice thing about these holiday songs is every year they're suddenly relevant again. It's like magic, right? It's
Yeah, exactly. I'm no dope, but no, it was just like for me, it was just kind of a fun thing to do, and it happened pretty organically, and that's when things are the best. You know, when you have an organic idea and you flush it around, you kick it around with buddies, and it becomes a thing. That's when it's legit and feels good and feels right.
Okay, let's take you back, my friend, if you don't mind, because of course I should point out now that it's past December 14th, so people can now watch on demand, I'm sure, via CTV's comedy channel. They can watch the first ever Corner Gas animated holiday episode, Tinselitis. This is something people could literally like leave this episode and seek out on demand and enjoy today.
Yeah, so all of season 3, including the Christmas episode, Tinselitis, is now available to stream. It joins season 1 and 2 of the animated on Crave.
And again, a very smart decision to become an animated character, knowing that there was a pandemic on the horizon. So kudos to you.
Yeah, pretty prescient. It really, it was all about, for me, it was about knowing that in animation I could have season 1 hairline for the rest of my life. That's what it was about, really. And then it
must
just
be nice
turned
that
out
like no makeup required, right? Like you can just
no shaving. For me, it's about shaving. I don't enjoy shaving. I also don't want to have a beard, or like I don't like that itchy, you know.
I'm with you, man. Yeah.
But I like to shave about once a week. That's what I do. And when you're in TV production, it's every damn day, sometimes twice a day. If you're up first in the morning and last to which I often was on Corner Gas, sometimes I'd have to shave twice in the day. Brutal.
That's no good. That's like Homer Simpson, I think, had to shave twice in a day, if I remember correctly. But
there's a lot. There's too many similarities between myself and Homer Simpson. I remember the one episode where he was like worried about his weight, and
Yes.
and he weighed himself, and he weighed less than I did at the time. He
Oh,
weighed 239, and I was about 244. Yeah, that
well,
was
you're in
harsh.
beautiful Vancouver. I suggest you buy a nice bicycle, and then you can eat like a pig.
Well, I'm down now to back to my high school weight.
Oh,
Here's one of my stand-up comedy bits. I've been saying I'm down to my same weight I was in high school. And here's a tip: if you want to get down to the same weight you were in high school, it really helps if you were a bit of a pudge in high school. Super helpful.
that's great.
I'm just going to find a way to weasel in stand-up bits throughout this whole interview.
Oh, please do. I enjoy
What a
doing that.
crazy weasel I am.
Just do it. Now, okay, historically, I don't have any research. I don't have a crack research staff that has said this is true. This is my perception as a 40-something-year-old guy who has watched a lot of Canadian television. Historically, it seems to me like we talk about Kids in the Hall, and we can all talk about SCTV, and there's these great examples of Canadian television shows that are still fantastic. But when it comes to sitcoms, it seems to me historically we weren't particularly good at sitcoms. Now we're being celebrated worldwide because, Schitt's Creek is a huge global success, and Kim's Convenience is very good, and there's others. But I'm wondering, like, would we even have a Schitt's Creek here with the great success it's having if there wasn't Corner Gas? Like, do you feel like maybe you were a gateway to that?
I kind of, in some way, I think so, because I know that, like, one of the things that always irked me, leading into Corner Gas, years before Corner Gas, was this notion that we can't do sitcoms. I'd always hear people say, we can't do sitcoms in Canada. And I always thought, what a stupid thing to say. I know we don't do them very often, but
Right.
the notion that we can't do them is goofy. And I understand there's a certain pragmatic, logistic, economic reality to the fact that, like, generally speaking, it takes a lot of failures to find a hit. And each failure is very costly. So we don't have the market to warrant making 10 shows that don't work very well to find that one that does, because that one will more than pay for the 10 failures. We don't have that market. In the States, they can. If you find a Friends, the billions of dollars that the Friends generates will more than pay for the Hello Larrys and the whatever, My Mother, the Cars, all the shows that didn't. But the economics leans against the Canadian industry for creating sitcoms. But still, that notion that we can't do it always bugged me, especially because there were some sitcoms, even as a kid growing up, Canadian sitcoms that I liked. Hanging In, I always think Hanging In was a solid, loads of jokes, good, felt real. I thought Hanging In was great. King of Kensington was really good. The jokes on King of Kensington really holds up too.
So
anyway, so when we did Corner Gas and it became very, very popular, it was actually the #1 comedy in Canada at times, which was never happened before. It wasn't the #1 Canadian comedy; it was the #1 comedy ahead of U.S. counterparts. So that, I know that I've had people after that in the industry, comedians and writers and actors, say that they suddenly were able to get meetings with networks that they couldn't get before. And the notion was, it would always come up in the conversation that, well, Corner Gas is showing that maybe there's some merit to being able to do this. So, Mark McKinney, speaking of Kids in the Hall, Mark McKinney said in an interview that Canadian TV will always be defined as pre-Corner Gas and post-Corner Gas.
Wow.
And I wear that as a badge of honor, because I think he's a pretty sharp dude.
Well earned, Brent, because forget Canadian. Oh, it's a great Canadian sitcom. For us Canadians, it's a great sitcom, period. Like, it's like someone saying, I heard somebody on Twitter, an American said, oh, my son's taking ice skating lessons. And I saw every reply was just a Canadian saying, oh, we call that skating lessons here.
Yeah.
And I think Corner Gas is just a well-crafted, enjoyable sitcom, regardless of its country of origin.
Yeah, that was always my goal, was to make a show that happened to be Canadian. Because when I first talked to the network about it, I said, I don't want this to be a Canadian show. I want this to be a show that is Canadian. I don't want it to be about, a moose who dreams of playing in the NHL, but his father wants him to run the canoe factory, right? And his mother is French.
I think this might be something here. I'm just going to take some notes. That might be another sitcom I could pilot there. But yeah.
the stories, I want them to be stories that could take place. They're stories about people. And, if you see money, it's Canadian money. If they talk about where they are, they talk about Saskatchewan, but it's not what it's about. I always said, Seinfeld isn't about New York. That's where it takes place. It's about these people getting bothered by little things. And, that's one of the reasons that, we got, fan mail from Sweden. The guy said it's exactly like his town in Sweden. And we got the guy from New York said this is exactly like my neighborhood in New York City. It's because it's about the people.
Absolutely, but at the same time, it is nice as a Canadian citizen. It is nice to kind of hear that. Oh yeah, that is Canadian money, and this is a city or a town in Saskatchewan. Like, it does feel good that you didn't have to have it set in I don't know, Anchorage, Alaska, or something like that. Right?
It's funny how it's so. Like, I remember when I did my movie No Clue, I wrote and started a movie called No Clue. It takes place in Vancouver. And when we started shooting, that first day of shooting, some of the crew said to me, "So what city is this supposed to be in?" And I said, "It's Vancouver." And they said, "Yeah, no, but like, what's it supposed to be?" I said, "No, it's just Vancouver." And they're like, it is Vancouver?" I said, "Yeah, I talk about Abbott Street, and it's like." And they were so excited. The crew members were actually telling other crew members, they're going, "Hey, Vancouver plays Vancouver in this." They couldn't believe it because it's always Seattle or,
Right.
Portland. And so it just doesn't happen that often historically. But that's changing more and more. I kind of have I sort of have a theory that Canada we're a teenager. Like, we're a very young country, and we have for a long time been this little kid who either looked up to our parents, England and France, or looked up to our big, cool, loud cousin, the US.
Right.
And we always kind of tagged along, piddled along, tried to get their attention, and now, we're kind of, as a nation, we're like teenagers we're at the point now where we're like, we don't feel the need to hang out with mom and dad. We don't feel the need to hang out with our older brother. We can do our own thing. And I feel like we're just coming into our own now. We're the teenagers of the planet.
Well, that's great to hear, because we're so used to our stars, if it be, I don't know, a Jim Carrey or a Mike Myers, or, there's a long list, Dan Aykroyd. Let's keep going down the list. But they all went to the United States to sort of find their success. Like, they couldn't stay here and do it here. And you stayed here and did it here.
Yeah. And I mean, there's no question that if you're going to take a swing at the fence from a dollar standpoint, the idea is to do that in the States. But I just wanted to do it here. I wanted to make my product here and have it travel around the world. That was always my goal. It's one of the reasons it's the only reason my production company is called Sparrow Media, because a sparrow is a bird that doesn't need to fly south. So every time I see the logo of my company, I'm reminded that you don't need to fly south.
Because you had your old production company was Prairie Pants, right?
Well, Prairie Pants is the single purpose entity that does Corner Gas.
Gotcha.
But Sparrow is one of the owners of Prairie Pants. So it's one of those things where it's like corporate layers of different shows. Each show has a single purpose production entity name, and we chose Prairie Pants for Corner Gas.
Gotcha. No, I always liked Prairie Pants because it reminded me, Letterman's got worldwide pants, and I just like the idea of.
Well, that's kind of why we did it. Was Letterman always contended that pants was the funniest word in the English language. But I also used to do a bit in my stand-up act about Prairie Pants, about how guys, doesn't matter how much weight they put on, they keep the same waist size. They just wear the pants lower and lower and lower until it's just, they're 97% torso and just like tiny short pair of pants in the bottom. Right. So it was kind of, my partners said, that's a funny bit, and they liked the idea of calling it Prairie Pants. And I liked that, that dichotomy of Letterman having worldwide pants, and we were just Prairie Pants.
I like it. All right. If you don't mind, I got to go back to Craig Northey. I'm contractually obligated to come back there. But we talked about the Christmas song, which you collaborated with him. And you mentioned that you met him through the Kids in the Hall, which is really cool CanCon story unto itself here. But let me play a little bit, actually. Hold on here. So a jam like, which one? Okay, there's a couple here. Let me just play a bit of this here.
there's not a lot going on. But look closer, baby, you're so wrong. I roll my eyes back into my happy place.
All right, not a lot going on. And of course, not actually an odd song. So we're not crediting this one to the odds because Craig Northey collaborated with,
Jesse Valenzuela.
right, from the Gin Blossoms.
Yeah.
And great. It's a great jam unto itself.
It is. It is a fantastic song. And I had always said to Craig, one day if I do a TV show, would you do the theme song for it? And he was like, yeah, absolutely. You bet. And I'm sure he thought it was kind of a pipe dream. But anyway, when I got this show, I called him up and said, hey, I got my show. I need a theme song. And so he and Jesse Valenzuela were working on that song already. Not a lot going on. They kind of tweaked it and converted it. So they provided that, and they provided another song called My Happy Place, which in season 1 of Corner Gas, I'd kind of, it never ended up being a thing that happened regularly, but I envisioned where Brent would, in times of stress or trouble, we would see him retreat mentally into his happy place. In the first episode, or in the first season, he goes there one time, and it's just a place where angels feed him hot dogs. So anyway, Craig took that notion, he came up with a song called My Happy Place, and he submitted both of them, and we really liked both of them. And I said, well, why don't we do both? Like, one's an opening theme, one's a closing theme. Like, if it was good enough for WKRP, it's good enough for me.
I'm glad that was your point of reference, because that's my first thought when I think of a cool opening theme that's completely different from the cool closing theme.
Yeah, I thought, man, that's good enough for that. That's a high watermark for TV right there. That's a fantastic half-hour comedy. So it's good enough for them, good enough for me.
I have a question for you from a faithful viewer. He goes by the name Seismo Allegra. It's a very fancy name. I don't know if he's a fancy
Great
guy.
name.
I know. Back in the day,
Last name Butt. Seismo Allegra Butt.
Right. Back in the day when shooting Corner Gas in Rouleau, did I get that right? Rouleau?
They just say Rollo. They anglicize everything in Saskatchewan.
I understand. Okay.
There's a town called, when you look at it, written down as Bienfait, but it's Beanfait in Saskatchewan. You're going down to Beanfait.
Right. Okay. Rollo. That's much easier. Rollo. Is there a memorable freaking hot day that you can tell us about? Because when I visited the gas station, it was 35 degrees Celsius in July.
Yeah, there were plenty hot days. We made sure, I mean, it was a necessity. We had a huge AC unit strapped onto the back of the building, the set where Corner Gas and the Ruby was, because yeah, and even as it was, so imagine a 35-degree day, but also you have giant spotlights inside this little room on top of that. And so, your pores would be the size of nickels if you didn't have the AC on. So even as it was, so we would crank the AC as much as we could in between takes, shut it down, do the take, and maybe the scene would be a minute and a half long. You were already starting to sweat again by the end of that minute. So, and then the makeup people would come in and powder you up. Yeah, there was a lot of the days were brutally hot.
Paul Hawkyard had a question, but it's more of a general question. I'm curious as to what the answer will be. He says, besides your own creations, Brent, what's your favorite sitcom of all time?
Probably, and it's tough to pick one. If you really held my feet to the fire and said pick one, I would probably say the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Oh,
but both of Bob Newhart's, like his big one in the 70s and big one in the 80s,
sure.
I hold those in very high regard. The Honeymooners, I Love Lucy, how it changed everything. Cheers is fantastic for, especially for somebody who loves dialogue-driven comedy like I do. Cheers is great. Just sitting around a stool, cracking wise.
Right.
So but if I had to pick that one, it would probably be the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Here's a question from yours truly here. Did you meet your wife on the Corner Gas set, or were you a couple before Corner Gas started?
No, we met doing Corner Gas. As far as I had met her before. I knew who she was, but we didn't hang out or anything. I knew her as she was one of the top improvisational comics in the country. She played with the Vancouver Theatre Sports. She's an improv master. She's literally one of the best ever. Like, I'm not saying that. So when we were casting Corner Gas, the role of Wanda, I had initially written somebody older. And the idea that Wanda used to work for my dad, they were kind of more contemporaries. And then now I kept her on. And anyway, we couldn't find anybody who was really kind of nailing it. And then our casting agent out here in Vancouver said, would you consider looking at people younger to play Wanda? And I said, yeah, I would be open to that. There's no reason she has to be of a certain age. And she said, because you know who I think would be really funny in this part is Nancy Robertson. And I said, yeah, she's really funny. Let's see if she'll audition for it. So she came in and read for it, nailed it. Everybody loved her read right away. She was everybody's. So boom, that was done.
Right. Well, she's fantastic. So when you see her after this, just tell her Toronto Mike thinks she's amazing. So
I will. I'll pass that along. But yeah, we one of the first things we bonded over. We both liked old movies, and so we would watch and talk about old movies, and that was kind of how we first bonded.
Great. Now, do you know where your 6 Gemini Awards are right now? Like, if I said you had to produce them for me, could you do that?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in displaying and looking at any achievements you have. So I have an office here in my house. Like, this is my game room studio that I'm in, where I do a lot of AV production work, but a lot of my administration and writing. I have an office in my house, and they're all on a shelf up there. All the Canadian Screen Awards, Gemini Awards, International Emmy nomination.
Good for you. Awesome.
All that stuff. So I can see it every day. Be inspired.
I don't know, if you earn that hardware, you might as well appreciate it.
But I also find it very inspiring too. When when it's on the back wall, when I walk into my office, it's the first thing I see is these awards, and it fires you up a little bit.
Yeah, I can imagine, because you want to win more.
Well, it just kind of makes you know what it is. Like, I think we all have a certain kind of insecurity, and I think people in the performing arts certainly have a certain kind of insecurity. And there's something about going in to sit down and write something that can be a little daunting. And then you go in, when you first step in your office, you see I have posters of my work and the hardware up there, and it kind of makes me go, yeah, I can do this. Damn it.
Awesome. Cambrio has a question for you. Cambrio asks, how many bunny hugs do you own?
I got like probably 9. A lot of the country isn't going to know what we're talking about.
Yeah. What's a bunny hug? How's that for a follow-up?
The rest of the world seems to know it as a hoodie.
Oh.
But in Saskatchewan, like, Saskatchewan's the only place where you'd ever hear somebody say, I got Vico on my hoodie.
Oh, I got to ask you, I have a couple of clients. I think you're familiar with both of them, I think, but Larry Fedoric and Howard Glassman are a couple of my clients of mine that are from Saskatchewan. So I'm going to ask them about the bunny hugs.
Yeah, sure. They'll tell you right away what a bunny hug is.
This is a good question, because you're on Toronto Mike right now, a podcast, but a question from Cambrio is, why has the Butt Pod been on such a long hiatus? What's going on there, Brent?
Well, generally speaking, it's because I've been super busy, but also I have a hard time scheduling guests. So what happened was, I was doing this podcast called The Butt Pod, where I talk to the comedians about comedy, not just comedians, but mostly comedians, but I'll also talk to actors or musicians. Craig Northey's been a guest, that kind of thing. But it became increasingly more difficult for me to, comics are on the road. I travel on the road, plus I'm in production. It became difficult to schedule interviews where somebody would sit down with me in person here in my game room studio. Right. And I'd started a YouTube channel to be complementary to the podcast. And what I found was that I could be much more productive on the YouTube channel, because I can shoot stuff myself. If I'm on the road with my camera, I just shoot things, and I don't need to sketch. If I have an idea, I can just do it quick. Right. And so but I really miss, like, what we're doing here, sitting down, talking long form. I really like doing that. And so I've made kind of a vow that I'm going to, starting in 2021, starting in January, I'm going to start doing at least one episode a month of the Butt Pod.
Well, that's good to hear. rising tide lifting all the boats and such. Let's get some more some fresh butt pod content out there. Very cool.
Yeah. I mean, it's got the name right there. It's a marketer's dream, you know.
Butt pod, yeah, and you can get like a proctologist to sponsor it. There's so many
Yeah,
options here.
You could probably get actual butt pods. I'm sure there's somebody that makes butt pods that would be happy to. I don't know what that would entail.
I thought you were saying butt plugs for a minute there. I'm like, yeah, I think they're out there. What do I know about
You
that?
hear what you want to hear.
Do you call it a washroom, bathroom, or biffy?
All of those, whatever, and more. There's plenty more.
Is biffy though? Is that another Saskatchewan thing? Biffy?
I don't know. I mean,
Oh,
I
okay,
certainly
'cause
heard that a lot growing up, but I
Okay.
don't know if I didn't think of it as something that was strictly Saskatchewan.
I've never heard it.
is.
I've never heard
Yeah.
biffy for. I've heard washroom and bathroom. I've never heard biffy. So,
Biffy, yeah. My mother said it a lot.
how many Hawkins cheesies have you eaten in this past year?
Oh man, alive! Like, what are we going by? Gross weight? It
Yeah,
would be a lot. It's my favorite snack. It's cornmeal based, so I look at it like it's probably good. It's probably healthy.
that's a vegetable.
First ingredient is cornmeal. If you don't read beyond that, we're fine.
It's like
It's
when
in
you
my
put-
rider. When I do live shows, Hawkins cheesies and rye whiskey are the two things in my rider.
I always joke like because I like my snacks too, but I always think popcorn goes in the vegetable category, like when you're planning your meals and stuff, because it's popcorn.
It's fibrous, right?
Right. So I'm sticking with that. Hey, I got a question about this Royal Command Performance Gala that featured Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip. That was held in Saskatoon. Did you have a conversation with the Queen when you're there performing? Right?
Wouldn't say conversation, but we spoke. We shook hands and spoke. Also, I bristle. I've heard it said, and I've seen it written as a command performance for the Queen, but it's not a command performance for the Queen.
Okay.
It wasn't that. The command performance is when the royal family asks for you to perform for them, right? That's what a command. And this is not what that was. This was in 2005, the 100th anniversary of Saskatchewan being a province. We had a big to do, as I like to say, a big to-doerment, and it was held in the hockey arena, 13,000 people, and I was the MC, and it was a bunch of Saskatchewan born performers. Leslie Nielsen was there, Joni Mitchell was there, like a whole, and dancers and everything. And anyway, I was the MC of the thing. And as it turned out, the Queen and Prince Philip were going to be in attendance. So they had they weren't commanding me to be there. They were like, we're coming, whoever's there will be fine.
We want the man from Corner Gas. So
With the large head. Yeah.
But cool.
So
did you
they
get
came on stage afterwards and we got to meet them and shake their hands.
But did you get a briefing? Because I watched The Crown. That's the expertise I have in it.
Yeah, there's a protocol. You get
so did somebody brief you? Like, don't ever touch her until she reaches out first. Like, did you get like rules?
Yeah, they give you a little printout, and somebody talks to you. They gathered as a group and say, here's kind of the protocol that you need to know. But it reminded me of, I had this when I was a kid. One of my brothers is 10 years older than me. I have another brother who's more old than that. I'm the youngest of 7 kids. So anyway, but when I was maybe 7 years old or something like this, I had an argument with my brother who would have been like 17 at the time. And I had said, I don't think I would ever want to meet the Queen, because if she doesn't like it, she can chop your head off. Right? Judging by the fairy tales and whatnot, the stories that I'd read, seems like this is a dangerous proposition to meet the Queen, because if they don't like it, she can chop your head off. And my brother said very impatiently with my student, "No, she can't chop your head off." I said, "Yeah, no, it's in all the stories. Read up on this." And he said, "No." And so we had this argument back and forth, and the argument ended with him saying, "Well, don't worry about it. You're never going to meet the Queen." And that argument came rushing back to my head as I was meeting the Queen on the stage.
That's great. Yeah, you never know. You never know where life will take you, right? There you are meeting the Queen. So.
And she never even has hinted that my head might come off. She never had me worried for a moment about that.
Well, you live to tell the tale. Now, I need to know, Brent, why did Corner Gas come to an end after 6 seasons? Like, there was more gas in that tank, no pun intended here. Is that your decision to just go do something else, or tell me why it ended?
Yeah, it was. just kind of felt like it was time. And I didn't want it to overstay its welcome. I didn't want it to be, I didn't want to watch it wither and die on the vine. It had been, you know, it was too important to me, and it was, you know, too important to a lot of people. For I felt that I was the, you know, the custodian of the show, and it was on me. And the network had said to me, you know, it's your call, you decide. And so, you know, we had that discussion around season 4. And as we were ending season 5, I thought, I've said this before. I said I felt like the show tapped me on the shoulder and said, it's time to start wrapping this up. And so I called a meeting and I said, season 6 will be our last. And but a part of that also is, yeah, as creative people, you want to create, you want to do other things. And for me, doing Corner Gas was, you know, I would get picked up at 5 a.m. and I would be brought home at midnight, and I would sleep for 3 hours, and I would do it all again. And it was, you know, the great blessing of my life, but it was also, you get crushed under the weight of doing the show. It's like people don't understand the you know, it's just a machine that has to keep being fed. And I was, you know, I'm on set for 12 hours a day, and then I have to write and edit on either side of that. So it was just a nonstop machine for the months that we were in production. And at a certain point, it kills you.
But clearly there was more gas in the tank, because not only are you still doing the animated special, but you did the, of course, Corner Gas, the movie. So did you always think there was a movie in you, like 6 seasons in a movie, like you see on Community?
Yeah, kind of. That was the idea, was that we thought when we pulled the plug on it, the idea was, wouldn't it be great if we could come back in a few years and do a movie? And, you know, the network was interested in that. And, you know, so we did it. We wrote a movie. It was difficult to write a movie. We took our time, got the script right. But when we felt that we had an actual movie here, we went and we made it. And for me, that was going to be the cherry on top. That was going to be the final thing. The last hurrah of Corner Gas was going to be this theatrical feature film. The problem was, it's not really a problem. The issue is that it was so highly attended. It was the most watched thing that year. It was like 7 million Canadians or something saw Corner Gas, the movie. It was physically selling out theaters. I remember my brother calling me from Calgary saying, I can't get into your stupid movie. It's sold out. Like I'm supposed to be upset by that. Oh no. So it was actually doing so well that Cineplex called the network and said, can we have this in theater for another week, because it was doing so well. So that the response to the movie made the network call us up and say, listen, there's clearly still an appetite for these people in this little town. Would you want to do more episodes? But, you know, it just didn't feel right to me to go back and do more of the same. Right. And, you know, Janet's health wasn't great. And, you know, I was going bald, and it was all, I always said, you know, remember when they went back to Gilligan's Island and Gilligan had white hair? It was traumatic. It looked terrible. Yep. So I didn't want to do that to anybody. But at the same time, you like to have a gig. Yeah, I enjoy being employed. So I said, well, what could we do differently? And I have a history in cartooning and illustrating. And so the notion of animating came up pretty quickly. And I was in a fortunate position that one of the guys who wrote on Corner Gas, his name was Norm Hiscock, who actually wrote on Kids in the Hall too, and he wrote on Saturday Night Live.
The name's familiar to me.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He's a great comedy writer. He's from Montreal originally. And anyway, Norm Hiscock wrote on Corner Gas, and he also had written on King of the Hill. He was one of the writers on King of the Hill. So here's a guy who understood our show and our sensibility, and he understood primetime adult animation. So I was able to go up to him and say, listen, Norm, we're thinking about doing an animated version of Corner Gas. What would we do differently? How would we write? He stopped me. He said, don't do anything differently. This is the perfect show to animate. Just write more scripts. This will be great. And so that kind of encouraged and emboldened us. And we, you know, the first thing we did was I said, let's make a 3-minute demo, because I didn't want to do this if it didn't feel right. And the only way to see if it felt right was to do a short version of it.
And, you know, much like the aforementioned Simpsons we referred to earlier in this podcast episode, you can go you can go long with an animated. That's the glory, you know. You can
Yeah,
how
there's a
many? It's
lot of
31 years, I think, The Simpsons has been on.
there's a lot of upside to it. I've told people that I'm drawing the line at 40 years. If this goes 40 years, I'm pulling the plug. That's it. Good night, nurse.
Now I'm going to pick up something you dropped there because I want to spend a moment, if you don't mind, talking about Janet Wright. Because of course the cast has reunited in animated form, but Janet's no longer with us. What was it like working all those years with Janet? And I can only imagine how shocking that news was that she had passed.
Yeah, well, I'll answer the first part of it first. It was working with Janet was, it was just a blast. She was like no other person that I'd ever met. She was, that classic kind of soft hard ass, like she was she was a tough broad, like somebody you don't want to cross, and she didn't suffer fools gladly, but she could also be very silly and fun, and she had a tremendous respect for the business, acting and writing and directing and all that kind of stuff. She lived and breathed it and understood it at a very, very deep level. So for me, somebody coming into, I'd never done a series before. All the TV production I'd done was one-off stuff. And so to surround yourself with people who knew what was going on, and, veterans like her and Eric, it was invaluable to me. But beyond that, she and I just had a lot of laughs. We had really, like, the scenes that where it was, where Brent and his mom Emma, when it was just the two of us in those scenes, like, we really cherished those. We had a running gag where I tried to always make them eating scenes, because she and I were both trying to watch our weight all the time throughout the show. So I felt like if our characters were eating, then we had no choice. We just had to do it. So it was always like craft dinner and hot dogs, I would write it in, stuff that we weren't allowed to eat in real life. But we just made each other laugh a lot.
And then she is in the movie, of course. So she's in the movie, Corner-Gas the movie. But then I guess a couple years later, she passes away.
Yeah, you can tell that her health isn't great in the movie. She was a long time very committed smoker, and that caused some problems. And it just in the end, it just kind of caught up to her. So you can see in the movie, like, we wrote in where she's like on this scooter, and that's partly because she had some mobility issues and things like that. So her health wasn't great. And so she was kind of the heartbreaking thing too, is she was very excited about this notion of doing an animated show, because she could participate still without having the physical rigor of it,
Right.
But sadly she didn't. She passed away just after the idea came out.
Oh.
But so then her husband Bruce, actually, because I wasn't sure whether we should continue with the Emma character. I debated whether we should continue at all. I talked to her husband Bruce. So, what do you think Janet would want? And he said, absolutely, Janet would want the Emma character to live on. He said, there's no question that's what Janet would want. She loved Emma very much, and she would want Emma to keep going and continue to be part of the group. And then beyond that, he said, who you should consider reading for the part is a good friend of Janet's named Corinne Coslow, who they're good theater friends, and she has a similar timbre to her voice that Janet had. And so we auditioned Corinne. I wrote a couple scenes specifically for her to read with Eric, and they worked great together. And she understood the Emma character because she had watched, and like I said, she was friends with Janet. And so she was able to step in. So it's kind of a cathartic balm in a way, that the person now playing Emma is Janet's good friend who was recommended by her husband.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Eric, who Eric's still with us. I don't want to confuse anybody.
Yeah.
Eric, I was watching. So this is last night. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I introduced them to the do you remember Franklin, the turtle character, the cartoon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
There's a great Christmas special. It's really good. It's on YouTube. I think Treehouse is sharing it on YouTube, so you can stream it anytime. for free. And Eric plays the grandpa turtle in this movie. Like Eric's in
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Like he's all over the place. So just last night I was hearing his voice and I was thinking,
He is. He's one of those guys that's like he really is everywhere in TV shows and movies and just his voice and yeah. But I mean, he should be. He's very talented,
Right.
and again, one of those people that's absolutely committed to the craft and understands it and lives and breathes it. That's why it was funny to have him and Janet play my parents because unbeknownst to us, they had a history. They knew each other from the theater days. I think they met when they were 18 or 19.
Wow.
So they actually went, they could have been my parents.
Right. No, great casting, which I mean, that's why it connects with people. Great casting and great writing. But I got a question quickly about the movie just before we move on. Is that Kevin Wright? I don't think any relation to Janet there, but Kevin wants to know, will there be another Corner Gas movie? And if so, can I support that Kickstarter campaign too? Thanks.
There isn't going to be another. I mean, unless it was like an animated thing, but I don't think we're going to do another live action thing. I think live action Corner Gas is behind us. Never say never, but often say highly doubtful. That old chestnut. That's how that old saying goes. Never say never, but often say highly doubtful. Then you're really covered.
Quoting the Magic 8 Ball with that one.
So, but if we were to do it, I would be grateful for your Kickstarter support. It was a fantastic, the people helped kick off the movie with the Kickstarter thing.
Yeah, I guess a live action, the one problem you'd have to address is that Janet wouldn't look like Janet. Well, Janet's character, wouldn't look like Janet Wright. So I guess
and I mean, the old gas station and Ruby set had to come down. They were torn down, so we would have to build a whole other thing. And it's just kind of I understand the kind of the want and the sentimentality, and it touches on some very nice feelings and emotions, but there's a glaring impracticality to doing more live action stuff.
And you're a cartoon now. Like just you embrace your animated self and continue forward. People are loving the animation as well.
Yeah, the response has been fantastic. Like we didn't know how people would respond to this thing, and but I think that's why doing that 3-minute demo was important, because if it didn't feel right, I just wasn't going to move forward. So without that notion that this felt like more episodes, we wouldn't have gone forward. So that 3-minute demo was very important.
Now, Brent, let's remind people, we said it off the top, but so just, you know the details better than I do, but season 3 of the animated series is now available for streaming, and that includes the holiday special. This is the week, everybody. You know what it's like. On December 26th, I don't want to hear any more Christmas carols. I don't want to watch the Raccoons Christmas. I watched that one too, by the way, it holds up nice.
Awesome.
It's great.
That was a great show.
I know, and it had such a great ecological message. Like it was ahead of its time.
Way ahead of its time, and solid jokes.
Yes, no, and I have I have a buddy, Stu Stone, who actually does a voice on the Raccoons, which is sort of an added bonus. But it was tremendous. I love that. I'm a product of the '80s. I know, big fan of the Raccoons and then Franklin and all these things. Although Franklin, I think, might be more '90s, but I digress. Where am I going with this again? Oh yeah, so tell people again, where can they stream the animated series, Corner Gas, the animated series, and that holiday special. And again, that song that we played off the top that you did with Craig Northey, do you want people to just phone their local radio station and demand it? Is that the plan here, Brent?
Hey, that's a good idea. I don't mind that idea. Reach out via social media to your local radio stations, or call them up and say, play that song. Everyone can sing at Christmas. It's available. The song is available wherever you get your digital music, whatever your preferred platform is. It seems to be wherever: Spotify, iTunes, Google Play. Well, I don't know what all the different ones.
A lot of them.
Wherever you get your digital music, you can find Everyone Can Sing at Christmas. So go get it, make it part of your holiday playlist. The series, Corner Gas Animated, season 1, 2, and now season 3, including the Christmas special, are all available for streaming, binging at your leisure on Crave. So if you get the Crave app, and open up a Crave account, there's lots of good stuff on Crave.
They got
that HBO deal going on. So a lot of
great HBO stuff. I don't, HBO, that's one of the only producers where like I'll watch something just because the HBO logo is on it. Like I'll go in cold. I see an HBO logo, go, let's give this a shot. And more often than not, I'm thoroughly impressed by the quality.
Did you watch the new Perry Mason series?
No, that's
Really good.
HBO? Okay,
Yeah, it was made by HBO. It's available on Crave. You can get it through Crave, I believe.
I'm
I
in.
think it was
I'm in.
Yeah.
Brent, thanks so much, man. I know I took an hour of your life here, but I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope you got something out of it as well. Thanks for doing this, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I enjoyed talking to you. I enjoy these long form chats, and you're a pleasant, personable young fellow. So all the best.
Oh,
to
a
you.
young fellow. I'm probably only this
compared
much
to me.
younger than you. I just have more hair. That's the only difference.
Sure, throw that in my face. That's
Oh.
a nice parting shot as we leave.
And we had such a good experience. But I will leave you with this. If you ever wanted to return to Toronto, Mike, and kick out the jams with me, it would be a pleasure. And just in a nutshell, it's like a sequel to this. This is our deep dive A to Z. Although I didn't ask you the merchandising question, I should probably slip it in right now. There's a lot of Corner Gas merchandising out there. Like, how did that do for you? Like merchandising the characters and the everything.
Yeah, over the years, it's the response has been great. People are always asking for stuff. I remember it was season 2, I think, and I had gone to Toronto for some press publicity thing, and I was in a cab. We had driven from the airport downtown, and I saw a guy walking on Yonge Street, actually wearing my Corner Gas work shirt.
Oh, wow.
That was really when I was like, man, we're onto something here.
Very
This
cool.
is really, but yeah, people can go to cornergas.com, or there's a Shopify site for Corner Gas.
Cool.
And there's actually some holiday merch available too.
Okay, people do that. And I'll just to wrap it up like a Christmas gift, wrap up that Kick Out the Jam sentiment really quick, because I was chatting with Steve Paikin about it this morning, because he's up next to Kick Out the Jams. Basically, you tell me ahead of time, these are my 10 favorite songs of all time. We meet on Zoom like this, and we play them. I play them a bit, then I fade it down, and then you tell the world, like, what does that song mean to you? Why did you choose it? Oh, this is the song when I was a teenager. I would hear it when I was delivering newspapers, whatever.
We'll do that. I got a tremendous story about the song "Dance" by Queen City Kids. It'll be in that mix when we do that one day.
Okay, now you're contractually obligated to do this, so I'm gonna bother you in a few months and book this. But
play me out with "Dance" by Queen City Kids.
All right, I'll put that in post. "Dance" by Queen City Kids. I'll do that. Thanks, Brent. This was amazing.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Take care.